I mentioned it in the intro, but the fact that you were there for Hell in a Cell, and obviously we've heard so much from Mick and from the Undertaker over the years. It feels like it's been talked to death in some ways, that match.
Right, right.
But I've actually never heard your side of the story. So I'd be fascinated to hear kind of how it was like, what it was like to be there on that like truly insane night when wrestling changed in many ways.
God, it was unbelievable. Takes that bump off the cage for the love of this business. You
Mm.
know, I mean,
Did you know it was coming? Like,
um,
what had you been told beforehand about he's going to be thrown off a top
now,
of a...
see, now he didn't practice this, okay?
No,
They
it's the
didn't
kind of bump you only want to do once in your life, I would
exactly,
imagine.
right. Well, I mean, and this is where I'm going with that too. Like, there was no big air balloon underneath the table because when Shane and Undertaker did that, they had an air balloon under the table because they were getting better at taking
Oh,
this bump.
really? At WrestleMania 32 when Shane did the
So
peak. Right.
exactly.
Yeah.
So Shane did practice the bump on a big, in previous nights before that WrestleMania.
Okay.
I was there. We went over stuff, but still, don't get me wrong. It's a hell of a dangerous freaking bump, right?
Mm.
You can crack your back, you can break your back, you can crack anything. I mean, it's just you can just go off just a little bit in that from that 18-foot from the top of the steel cage to that table, and just if you land the wrong way, it can go really bad for you.
Mm.
But now here, going back to Mick Foley taking that bump, we didn't have all that with the air balloon underneath that table, to take some of that pressure off and all that other stuff. So he took that bump like he took it. It was just unbelievable. I mean, I was shocked. No, I didn't know it was going to be like that. I didn't know at first. So coming down and him going through the cage again, and I remember him asking me for the first time, Mike, he goes, Mick Foley says, Mike, have I been on this stretcher before? And it was the second time he was getting on it. He was on it. And I said, yeah, Mick, you have. This is the second time. And he got right off. He goes, I'm not going on this stretcher again. And he got off the stretcher right away. And they're screaming, get him back on the fucking stretcher. Get him. I'm like, he's not going back. Like that time we had IFBs, but then we didn't have the talk back communication
Mm.
to Gorilla. And that eventually came years later. Okay. So
Mm.
we can hear everything Gorilla's saying, but we couldn't talk back. So, and they wanted him back on a stretcher, but he wasn't getting back on that stretcher. And I believe there's a documentary coming out on that whole thing. And I remember Dark Side of the Ring. They contacted me about 6 or 8 months ago, wanted me to do a clip on that, but then it said, "Oh man," and I had all these great points on what was being said and everything, but they never got back to me, and they said it was a budget thing.
Right.
And I said, well, okay, fine, because they missed out on a lot of good points. But so when Mick got off the stretcher again, and then they proceeded when he fell through the cage the second time, right?
Mm. Which wasn't planned.
Which right, so they did tie wrap that, I believe they did have tie wraps up there, so I believe that was planned because I believe I did see some tie wraps broken inside the ring,
Okay.
so they did tie wrap it with
Okay.
plastic tie wraps. Um, After that, I slide in, and I thought Mick had a big booger in his nose, and like it was something all up in his nose. And I'm looking, and I'm like, Mick, let me get this booger. You got to get something out of your nose, because I was getting ready to get something to wipe it because I wanted him to be able to breathe through his nose after this
Mm.
bump, nose, mouth. Well, it wasn't a booger. It was his tooth. I went, holy shit! I looked, and I'm like, Mick, your fucking tooth is up in your nose. I'm like, Mick, you all right? He's like, yeah, I'm good. I'm good. So we got the tooth back out of the nose, and um, it was amazing for what he was doing for the love of the business, for the check. I don't know, but
Mm.
it was nothing I've ever seen done in my career since I started in '85 full time.
It's
And I
insane. I
don't
mean,
think,
for you as a referee, obviously, you see that second one and he gets the chair falls down and legitimately knocks him out when he
right,
hits the
right,
mat. And also, I think that's the ultimate bump to dispute anyone who ever says that a wrestling ring isn't hard. Like you watch him fall on that ring and there is no
yeah,
bounce. His body just crumbles.
oh yeah,
Um, but for you there, you're kind of watching it because I know, you can see Undertaker's there on the top, deeply concerned,
Right,
just legitimately very worried that he may have
right.
killed the man almost in the ring. Um, it must have been
Yeah.
really hard, like to navigate those last few minutes, worrying like whether or not he should
Eh,
still be out there.
Man, we didn't. I mean, there was doctors checking on him. They were concerned about broken ribs, his lungs, or anything like that. Maybe something crushed or broken ribs and concussion. I believed in, it was weird because like you knew he was concussed, right? But back in them days, man, that rang my bell. You never really looked at concussions like we're looking at them now in sports.
Yeah.
And American football, in soccer itself, and football in England, right? They're looking at concussions now more often, and so many other sports. Um, and that all went down in Pittsburgh, right? That pay-per-view, I
Yes.
believe that was.
Yeah.
Now, do you ever remember the time when Mick Foley took the 12 chair shots or 11 chair shots over the head from The Rock? Wasn't that in
Hmm.
Pittsburgh too as well?
I think so. Yeah.
So I'm just like, I didn't know what was Mick Foley doing when he goes back to Pittsburgh. It's like, because those chair shots, I remember when Rock was hitting him with those chair shots, he was not holding back
No. No.
one bit. And it was just like, it was almost like a slaughter. It was just like, and God knows how Mick took all those chair shots.
Well, did you ever watch the Beyond the Mat documentary that they
Yes,
made? Yeah, and
yes,
obviously that documents that, and it's showing Mick's
yes.
family at the side, and oh, it's just brutal to watch. I mean, I
Uh,
have, I,
right. I was out there. I was
yeah,
watching it. I just, I was just like, what the fuck are we doing? Like, what's going on? And I'm
yeah.
thinking, and then, at one point when I was talking on my podcast, I go, what is it with Mick Foley going back to Pittsburgh, jumping off 18-foot cages, taking 11, 12 chair shots? And
He needs to keep away from Pennsylvania, that man.
yes, yes.
No, I mean,
But
I recorded with Mick a few months ago, and I was saying to him like, I think all of his fans just say please that he's actually still, he seems in, he's in pretty good health, really, all
he
things
is.
considered, for the amount of
He's
abuse he's
great.
gone through. Yeah,
Yeah, I seen him in St. Augustine in his signing in over the summertime or something. He just looks great.
yeah,
And he was all happy about me doing the documentary because he had said a lot of things to me in there. And during that, the time when he's taking them bumps and on the stretcher, and we talked about the tooth, and we talked about, and it was just like, and he was like, hey man, I'm really excited. I did mention your name at the doc. I said, yeah, they called me, but then they never. There was something about in the budget. They said they had to use JR, and then all their money went to the budget using JR.
ah,
So I was like, damn. I was like, I'd love this. Love to talk about that.
well, it's incredible, and
Yeah.
yeah, I
And
mean,
I was, because I carried him out the whole way with Terry Funk,
yeah.
and it was just, and he was, just talking to Terry and just asking us what he did, what happened here and there.
And didn't the Undertaker break his ankle or break his foot or something when he came
Yeah,
down as well?
did
Like,
something with his foot. Yes, he
see,
did. I think he
he jumps down, he starts hobbling around as well.
badly sprained ankle. Yeah, which is
Yeah.
worse than a break.
You can only imagine that conversation between Undertaker and Mick Foley afterwards, can't you?
Yeah.
Backstage, like, I've got a tooth through my nose, and you're like, yeah, but I sprained my ankle. You just imagine.
That tooth,
Yeah,
right from his bottom of his mouth, went right through his lip
yeah, crazy.
into his nose.